Episode number 54, Making the Case. Class, egos, and standards. Our search for meaning. You're not going to want to miss this one. Hey, what's going on, YouTube family? It's your boy, the one and only, the impeccable, the unstoppable, the gracious Dr. Jacob Isom, educator, author, speaker, entrepreneur, father, content creator, a little bit of everything. You already know. It's another episode of Making the Case, episode number 54. What is today's episode, you may ask? Class, egos, and standards. Our search for meaning. Now, here in a second, we're going to get into what exactly I mean by that. But of course, I can't continue without going over my two channel norms. One, we attack points and not people. And two, we don't do all the cussing and derogatory stuff because we keep it professional and pimping. Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Now, so let's get to our opening statement and what today's episode is about. Class, egos, standards, our search for meaning. Now, let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. So, it is of my belief, through my observation, my research, um, you know, just living for 21 years, uh, that as people, we take our class distinction very seriously and we care a lot about where we rank amongst other people. Okay. And we also know that our ego plays a factor in that, right? So the more money we make, typically the larger our ego is because we get more attention. Some of us have a reputation because of our money and our class distinction. And then, not to mention the fact that that affects our dating status. Okay. So we typically have higher standards when it comes to the amount of money we make, the position that we in life, the reputation that we have, etc. Okay. So that's why those three I kind of put together because they literally lead one into the other. Okay. You typically will have better um dating chances, the more money you have, which will put you in a certain class. When people look at you a certain way, even if they think you have money, that will increase your dating odds, and that will also put you in a light, in a public light. Whether that's you're doing content, such as what I do, if you have a large following on social media, if you're known throughout the community. So it's different things that can put you in a certain light, that would increase your dating chances. That will also put you in a certain class because a lot of time, um, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example, right? Professional sports players, right? And I don't care if this soccer, basketball, football, or what have you, baseball, what have you. Now, there is this belief that everybody that play professional sports are millionaires. I'm not saying everybody believes that. I'm just saying there's a good amount of people that believe that once you're on that level, that you're just rolling in dough. When we know based off the numbers, right? Only your top major figures are the ones that getting commercials, getting brand deals, and things of that nature. Okay, so they're bringing in a lot of money because those top individuals probably make more money off the court, off the field, off whatever, more than they do on the court, on the field, or whatever sport they play. All right. Where most of the other people who are in professional sports are living paycheck to paycheck. But because it is the prestige that comes from playing a professional sport, it is the idea that people make a lot of money, that will increase their dating chances, that will also have people look at them in a certain class distinction, right? When at the end of the day, they probably just upper um middle class or lower high class, right? A lot of your professional athletes. So all those things play a factor. Okay. So when we look at our profession, our career, when we look at whatever we do to make money, that impacts our dating, that also impacts our ego. Okay. So this is what today's episode is going to be about. I have three pieces of evidence. Sorry, I just got through eating. Man, I'm just being real. Okay. We got three pieces of evidence that we're going to go over together to show you just how class, ego, and standards impact who we are. Because really, and I say it's a search for meaning because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we live in a modern time where how much money you make is very relevant. All right. Like people will look down upon you and call you broke and shame you if you don't have a good career, if you're not doing something that people find valuable in their eyes. So that's just the time we living in. And yes, it does impact your dating status and it impacts your ego. All right. So that's what we're going to look at today. So we have a piece of evidence for each one. And we're going to look at it and we're going to see whether or not you agree with it or not. All right. So before we move on, though, please let me know. Give me some feedback about the topics because 99.9% of the topics come from here. But as always, you're welcome to send me any topics you would like me to make the case on. So, just let me know what you think about the topics. All right. So, without further ado, let's get into our first piece of evidence. Yeah. All right. So, for our first piece of evidence, we're going to cover social class. Okay. For those of you that have been hiding under a rock, under a bridge, what we mean by social class essentially is the rank, file order, the hierarchy you are placed in based on your income. All right. So we're going to look at how that impacts our psychology. So I put up an article from the British Journal of Social Psychology. And it was written by Anthony S.R. Manstead. And the title is The Psychology of Social Class, How Socioeconomic Status Impacts Thoughts, Feelings, and Behavior. I'm only going to read the abstract to you as well as a little piece of the article. As you know, articles could get pretty lengthy. But the parts that I want to read to you makes the case for how social class really impacts us and the way we really view it, right? So let's scroll down into what I want to read to you guys. All right, so let me not skip it. Drawing on recent research on the psychology of social class, I argue that the material conditions in which people grow up and live have a lasting impact on their personal and social identities, and that this influences us both the way they think and feel about their social environment and key aspects of their social behavior. So now let me stop right there with just that first bit because it says a lot, right? Because for me, being a person that grew up in the quote unquote hood or the quote unquote ghetto, a lower class neighborhood is what I grew up in, right? That impacted me even to this day because I understand the poor situation that I came from and it drives me. It drives my work. It makes me want to give back to those poor communities, right? It also reminds me of how humble I once was and that I never want to return back to those beginnings, right? So that's the psychology of social class, right? Even to the point when we're talking about people who, your rappers, your drug dealers, who boast and brag about the hood, right? Even though they're outside of it, right? They living in suburbs, kids go to private schools and things of that nature, but that neighborhood, that upbringing still impacts their psychology because they're still talking about it and they're still making money off of it. Now, I will argue that it's more about making money off of it and actually making yourself look as if that you're still down, right? But that still is something that impacts you nevertheless. So it's kind of two ways that you can look at how social class can, maybe even more than two ways, can really impact your psychology. Let's keep reading though. Relative to middle class counterparts, lower working class individuals are less likely to define themselves in terms of their social economic status and are more likely to have interdependent self concepts. They are also more inclined to explain social events in situational terms as a result of having a lower sense of personal control. So they're saying that if you're in that middle tier, right, you kind of more sympathetic and more empathetic to what people below you are going through, or people who don't make as much money as you, because you're not in the tier where you feel like that you're really better than somebody, even though you can really say that, but you don't feel that because you understand that most middle class people are living paycheck to paycheck. Like you one traumatic or one bad situation from being in a low class situation yourself. And a lot of people in the middle class would never reach the higher class because a lot of people are comfortable. Let's just be honest, right? So I think that's kind of the reason why. And I imagine it's multi-factored, multi-layered. So, but I think it's a good point that they point out. Let's see. Working class people score higher on measures of empathy and are more likely to help others in distress. The widely held view that working class individuals are more prejudiced towards immigrants and ethnic minority is shown to be a function of economic threat, in that highly educated people also express prejudice towards these groups when the latter are described as highly educated and therefore pose an economic threat. So the fact that people are afraid that either their wages are going to decline because there's a huge immigrant population coming in and taking those lower paying jobs, or that their jobs are just getting taken in the first place. So there's real fear there, right? Even though, let's be real, Americans are very spoiled and a lot of jobs we just don't want to do. So it's almost like we complain and we're afraid of things that just not realistically is going to hurt us, right? But fear a lot of time is invisible and not real, and we're afraid of it anyway. Just think about it. We're afraid of the dark. Just think about it. All right. Let me see. The fact that middle class norms of independence prevail in university and prestigious workplaces makes working class people less likely to apply for positions in such institutions, less likely to be selected, and less likely to stay if selected. In other words, social class differences in identity, cognition, feelings, and behavior make it less likely that working class individuals can benefit from educational and occupational opportunity to improve their material circumstances. This means that redistributive policies are needed to break the cycle of deprivation that limits opportunity and threatens social cohesion. So it seems that their argument is a lot of middle class, working class people stay where they are because they don't feel like they can, either things are too expensive, they don't have the opportunity that they think they might have. So, and that's certainly not true, right? When United States of America, where I mean, there's so many different opportunities. A lot of time we just have to reach out and get out of our comfort zone. All right. So it's a little bit more I want to read to you. One of the ironies, hold on, I went a little bit past. All right. One of the ironies of modern Western societies with their emphasis on meritocratic values that promote the notion that people can achieve what they want if they have enough talent and are prepared to work hard is that the division between social classes are becoming wider and not narrow. And that's a fact. We know that the wealth gap is right. It's crazy. In the United Kingdom, for example, figures from the Equality Trust show that the top 1/5 of households have 40% of national income, whereas the bottom 1/5 have just 8. These figures are based on 2012 data. Between 1938 and 1979, income inequality in the United Kingdom did reduce to some extent, but in subsequent decades, this process has reversed. Between 1979 and 2009, 2010, top 10% of the population increased its share of national income from 21 to 31%, whereas the share received by the bottom 10% fell from 4 to 1%. Wealth inequality is even starker than income inequality. And you know what? I'm gonna stop right there because even though there's numbers from um, United Kingdom, it don't look much different in the United States, right? So that is kind of shows you how social class impacts us on a day-to-day basis, right? It impacts how we look at people, it impacts our behavior. Just think about it. Like a lot of people want to, as we say, keep up with the Joneses. They want certain things that in their income bracket that it's not feasible for them to continue to go after if their pay is not going to increase, right? So it will be in the best of people to live below your means, right? To shop at certain stores, right? But some people, because they want to be looked at a certain way, are willing to go out there and buy certain things that is just not in their best benefit. And that's been happening for decades, right? And we know this is all based on social class, right? So how we react and respond out here is all due to how people view us, how people look at us, right? Us wanting to fit in, us not wanting to be left out, not wanting to be criticized, not wanting to be shamed, right? When we get with somebody else, we want to appear that we got it going on and stuff like that, which once again leads to the fact that when it comes to dating standards, right, that impacts that. So it's huge, man. Like, and that's why what people are willing to do a lot of things for money, right? We got OnlyFans, we got prostitution, we got corn, right? So um people are willing to do just to increase their social status. All right. So, do I see it changing anytime soon? No. If anything, it's gonna get worse, unfortunately. So, um, it's but that's due to our larger society, our larger culture, and what we truly value. So, all right, so that's my first piece of evidence when it comes to class and how we struggle to find meaning. We're going to get into our second piece of evidence, which we're going to talk about egos. Let go my ego. Let's get it. All right, so for my second piece of evidence, we're going to talk about the ego. Now, I believe that, and I'm pretty sure that I talked about the ego in a prior video. And I can't remember what context, but in this context, we're just simply going to talk about how the ego really impact our behavior and our thought process. So I have an article from one of my favorite platforms, which is Psychology Today. And I really should have been a psychologist, to be honest with you. So, because I love psychology, I love how the brain works and things of that nature. But this was written by Dr. Mark Leary. Title is "What is the Ego and Why is it so involved in my life?" All right, so let's get into it and see what he's talking to us about. The term ego is as confusing as any in psychology. Not only is the word itself used to refer to several distinct psychological constructs and processes, but the psychological landscape is littered with concepts that include ego in one way or another. Egotism, ego defense, egocentrism, superego, ego involved, and so on. But what does ego actually mean? What are we talking about when we refer to the ego? And what is the difference among all the terms in which the term ego is embedded? Put simply, the English word ego is the Latin word for I. Literally translated, ego means I. So that's like the simplest way you can get it. All right. If you were writing I love you in Latin, you would write ego amate. I'm going to have to use that. I'm gonna have to use that. And if you want, I think you should use it too. All right. Use of ego crept into psychology mostly through the work of Sigmund Freud. In Freud's theory, the ego is a part of the personality that arbitrates between the animalistic desires of the id and the moral and social standards of the superego. But interestingly, the word ego does not appear anywhere in Freud's extensive writing. He never used it. Rather, ego was a translation of what Freud, writing in German, called das Ich. Did I pronounce that right? Maybe. Literally, the I. In essence, Freud was referring to that conscious decision making part of you that you regard as I. As when you say, I dislike my mother, or I decided to change job, or I dreamt that my house was on fire last night. That is your I, your ego. So anytime you're thinking about yourself, when you think about what you have to do, your ego is involved, right? Which makes sense to how everything impacts your ego, right? From the food that you eat, the job that you have, the people that you befriend, right? The people that you're in a romantic relationship with, everybody impacts your ego. Everybody is going to either add to your ego or they're going to take away from your ego. It makes so much sense. So most terms that include ego involve process or reaction in which I, me, or mine figure prominently. Consider egoism, the motive to act in one's self-interest. Someone is behaving egotistically is simply pursuing his or her own goals, as we all do. A motive is egotistic when it's focused on what I want. All right. Which we all have to do what's best for us. So the ego can be both good and bad, or excuse me, as I like to say, both positive and negative. Or consider egocentrism. Egocentrism has also been used in a number of ways over the years, but it comes down to perceiving the world and interpreting it from your personal vantage point. We all are inherently egocentristic in that we can never break free from either our physical vantage point. I can perceive the world only from my physical location in space, or our personal psychological perspective that is influenced by our experiences, goal, belief, identity, preferences, and biases. People different in the degree to which they can step outside their own perspective to see these things from other viewpoints. But we're all locked into our own egocentric viewpoint because there's no way for us to process information except from our own personal frame of reference. And there is something to speak of when we talking about preference, right? Or I should say perspective. Okay. So you have your perspective, but you can also look outside and try to be more sympathetic and more empathetic to people and what they're going through. And a lot of times we do that because if we experience something similar to what somebody else go through, then we're speaking from our own perspective, but it's very much likened to somebody else's, which is the reason why most people feel comfortable enough to listen to people who have the same or similar experiences they do, right? So our ego state at that point is not as heightened, and is very much subjective, but not as heightened as someone who's just giving you advice on something that they never been through. All right. Let's scroll on down. Egotism is another common ego word in psychology. Egotism involves evaluating oneself more favorably than objectively warranted. Just as we are all egotistic and egocentric, we also tend to be egotistical as well. Thousands of studies show that people are biased to view themselves too positively. And of course, it makes sense, right? So even if we don't have this um grand success on a major level, we still want to look at ourselves. For instance, right? The whole idea that most women will rate themselves a 10. When we look at it objectively, most women are the 10. Even when we talk about scales, right? I was thinking about this earlier. There are going to be more ones and more twos, and the higher you go up, it's going to be less and less, right? Even though I would never rate somebody a 1 or a 2, I think the scale starts at 3 for me. Kevin Samuel would say take out the 7. So that means you're a 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, or 10. Right? But a lot of people are going to say they look better than they really do, unfortunately. Just saying. They're more accomplished than they really are, right? They can lift more than they really can, fellas, right? So it's all kind of instances where our ego impacts our daily behavior. All right. Oh, let's see. Perhaps the broadest ego-based term, egoic, is also the least common, although it's coming into vogue. Egoic simply means pertaining to ego or pertaining to I. Egoic thoughts, motives, emotions, and behaviors are reactions in which I, me, or mine take center stage. An egoic reaction is one in which I am centrally involved. Much of the time, people's thoughts, motives, emotions, and behaviors are infused with themselves with their I. They are thinking constantly about what they want, what they are doing, who they are, what other people think about them, and how things are going for them. In these situations, people are being egoic. They are highly self-absorbed, and their reactions are all about them. I'm not gonna lie. I was just thinking about myself earlier. I was just thinking about it's gonna be a great 2025, and this is why. And all the things I was listing had to do with me. But I am very aware of my ego. I like to check my ego, and sometimes I let my ego roam, and I'm sure you do as well. So, um, the ego can impact us positively and negatively, right? It's about awareness, if you ask me. All right. At other times, people thoughts, motives, emotion, and behavior don't involve much ego, not much I. When you're engrossed in a good book, working on engaging tasks, having a comfortable conversation, or in a flow experience, your I has receded into the background. You are responding automatically without much conscious self-related thought, and you are not currently concerned about who you are, what you want, or the implications of events or your personal interests and well-being. In these kind of situations, your responses are not dominated by I or by thoughts of me or mine. We might say that you are being low in egotism or hypoegoic. And I'll give you a perfect example. And we're going to stop on that note. I thought this was a great article, though. When you have kids, right? Most of the time, the I is not involved. You care about what they want, how they feel. Are they safe? Are they healthy? Are they comfortable? Are you hot? Are you cold? That's why that's the purest form of love that you will ever have. Unconditional love. And a lot of people search for that outside of the parent-child relationship, right? If you are a parent, you understand that. If you're a child, you understand that from your parent. Hopefully, most of us do, right? So I did a video a long time ago. The only type of love is unconditional love, right? So when it comes to the ego, it's certain things that the ego is going to stand out, and at certain times the ego is going to take a back seat. All right. All right. So, but before we move on to our third piece of evidence, I think that lets you know everything you need to know about why I'm saying that it's our search for meaning, right? Our ego is constantly having us searching for, okay, how much of me do I put in the situation and how much do I fall back and not worry about me? It's a tug of war. It's a constant tug of war in our life to trying to figure out, am I being too selfish right now? Like, I really want to think about this other person. Like, when do I compromise? When do I not? I mean, like, it's a constant battle that we all have to deal with, which should allow us to be more empathetic and sympathetic with each other because we all dealing with the same battles, the same conflicts within our mind. We all dealing with it. All right. So we're going to move on to the third piece of evidence. And now we're going to talk about standards. What kind of standards do you think I'm talking about? Of course, dating standards. Don't be silly. All right, so for my third piece of evidence, we're talking about standards, and yes, we're talking about dating standards because this is a relationship and educational show. So, of course, we're going to talk about dating. All right. So I actually have two articles in this last piece of evidence that I want to read to you, and the first one is from one of my favorite platforms, is the Medium. Okay, and the title is "Do You Have Unrealistic Dating Expectations?" by Martha Levinchiko. Levinchiko. Sorry if I butcher your name. You probably won't see this video anyway. Now, so let's get into it. Here we go. Everyone has standards, especially when it comes to love, but as a relationship consultant, I know all too well that it's easy for these standards to turn into unrealistic dating expectations, leading people to approach romance in less than ideal ways. Some get convinced that nobody's worth the effort and they set themselves up for failure, while others end up spending a huge part of their life searching for something that ultimately doesn't really exist. Nobody is immune to either type of mindset. So if you feel like your own dating standards are becoming a little too hard for potential lover to achieve, you may need to examine yourself for some of these common signs. You think couples should never fight. That's funny. If you think a couple should never disagree with each other no matter what, then I have news for you. Your standards are too high. A relationship is composed of two people with different mindsets and personalities. So there will always be a time when you won't see eye to eye. If you hold on to unrealistic dating expectations that include either always being in control of how you truly feel, then you'll never learn the art of fighting with someone you love, not to win, but to reach an intimate understanding. And that's also part of it, right? A lot of times people argue to kind of get the upper hand to prove they're right. I always say a relationship truly doesn't start until you actually have your first argument. Now, I'm not saying I'm the one that came up with it. I'm pretty sure I got that from somewhere else, and I wish I knew where so I can give it credit. So I'm sorry. But absolutely, conflict is natural. It's natural in relationships and natural in society. Now, how we deal with the conflict is what we need to really watch out for. We should be able to come to a resolution without any physicality, without any verbal insults and things of that nature. All right. You want dates to always be perfect. No amount of planning would ever give you a perfect date. There's just no such thing. If you can't enjoy yourself because you're too fixated on getting all the details right, then all you're doing is nursing unrealistic dating expectation. Not only will you be wasting everyone's time, you also miss out on imperfect but beautiful moments that will eventually turn to treasure memories. I would say these are more like people who are type A personalities, people who, um, who are more have a more obsessive compulsive personality, I would say. Because most people understand that everything is not going to go your way, even if it's well thought out and well planned. All right. Your partner wants you to spend all their time with you. Bugaboo. This will most likely just fast track you to being labeled needy or clingy. While it's understandable to want to spend a lot of time with your significant other, it's also not ideal, not to mention possible. To spend every waking moment with them, these kind of unrealistic dating expectations can also lead you to become irrationally jealous and suspicious of your partner's activity. Things are not advised if you want a healthy relationship. I think a lot of us understand that you want to be able to miss somebody, right? Like time away is healthy for a relationship. I don't want nobody always up under me. I don't know about you. Okay. I want time now. I don't want extreme amounts of time away. But I want good, healthy amount of time. So an 8-hour workday is a good, healthy amount of time. Maybe I need to go on a road trip for business for a couple of days. It's okay. I'll be back. All right. So I think a lot of people understand that. You think your partner should be able to read your mind? Oh my gosh. Yes, communication is important in dating, but it doesn't mean you should assume your partner will always automatically know what you're thinking. The nearly telepathic way married and other long-term people couples talk to each other can take years to develop, and even they won't always be able to anticipate every word and every thought. Absolutely. It takes years to get to a point where you know what your partner wants, right? So, ladies, no, we can't read your minds, okay? You have to tell us. You think true love is found and not made. Most unrealistic dating expectations can be tracked back to a person's concept of true love. If you hold on to the idea that love is something you should simply wait for, something that will come to you in a perfect gift wrap with a ribbon tied around it, then you'll only be disappointed. Successful dating may allow you to cross paths with someone special, but it still takes time and commitment to build a healthy and long-lasting relationship. The sooner you can let go of your unrealistic dating expectation, the better your chances are of having something close to the true love everybody always dreamed of. And to be honest with you, that's part of the problem. Dreaming, right? Unfortunately, everybody is not going to get the Disney fairy tale love story. It's just not realistic. So that is an unrealistic dating expectation that you're just gonna find your soulmate and your true love, and then y'all gonna have all these kids, and you're gonna be going on vacation every 6 months. Like everybody don't get that life. Part of the reason because you got to put in work to get it, sacrifice, commitment. So a lot of things that go into that. right? And some things are just not going to happen. It's just not natural, all right? Such as, oh, I'm going to use Sierra's prayer to give me a man. Come on now. Can we be real? So, um, the more likely we are to look at our social class and our ego and to check both and to get a more realistic situation where we are, then we'll have more success in the dating realm. You see how I connected that? All right. So I have another short article that I want to read to you in this third piece of evidence. All right, so this is an article from Rewire Me. Never heard of the platform. So this is the first time. So, and this is a really short read, so it won't take long to get through this. Um, so let's read this real quick. So it said, love fuels our dream. Love is hope. Love is what we live for. And when you're swept up in it, anything seems possible. This is the message conveyed in the majority of romance novels and romantic comedies. According to the media, love is dramatic and all-consuming. When it's not fairy tale, candlelit dinner, champagne, rose petal on the bed, it is a apocalypse of crying and laying in bed, sad breakup songs, and Christian Grey creepily stalking your outside window. I like that spin. While I've had my fair share of fairy tale moments, meeting a handsome stranger in Central Park, kissing in the rain, I'm also aware that these moments are a sparkling facade for what dating and relationship are actually like. And as much as I would like to meet my husband in a movie moment kind of way, if I met my Prince Charming in the gas station, I'll have to embrace it. When it comes to romantic expectations, common to set the bar too high without knowing. However, if your standards are too far-fetched, you might be missing out on a great guy or girl who is pursuing you. Here are a few questions to ask yourself to find out if you have unrealistic dating expectations. Are you looking for someone who actually exists, or are you looking and living in the fantasy world? Which is a very important question. Okay, you can have your list of physical expectations, emotional, mental, what have you, but when you combine all them together, is it something that can be made in the laboratory, or is it somebody that really actually exists? Right now, me myself, I believe in the 80-20 rule. Okay, I'm looking for 80% of what I want, and I know 20% I'm not gonna get. All right. And shoot, sometimes it might need to be 70-30. I'm just being real. Too picky. I want to marry a doctor who has a six-pack and is passionate about traveling, who loves to cook. You might as well be looking for Shirley McDreamy to ride down the beach on a white horse. The standard, an ambitious, health-conscious man who shares similar interests, whether it's traveling, cooking, or so on. I think that is more realistic. Okay. Now, some women might disagree. Is your dream guy girl checklist a defense mechanism? That's a great question. Typically, those who set unrealistic expectations are either trying to escape reality or have a fear of intimacy or commitment. So they're trying to create this list so they don't find the person they're looking for. There are many people who take themselves out of the dating game altogether with justification like, I'm too picky. I have a few friends that only go after men who believe will never reject them. The nice guy, safe in every way. The one they would know would never leave them, but they would never approach the guy who could potentially hurt them because also may be the love of their life. Essentially, they trade the butterflies and true happiness for security. In this case, the solution isn't lowering your standards, but rather letting yourself be vulnerable and open your heart up again. The thing about taking risks is that while you may fall on your face 9 times out of 10, the 10th time can change your life. And that's the thing that both men and women are afraid of getting hurt. So a lot of times we do go the safe route. And the safest route is just not being with anybody at all. How many people are like that right now in a situation? And this is what they'll say, I'm single by choice. No, you're single by defense mechanism. Let's be real. All right. Third, are you giving people a chance in the beginning? At some point in our life, we most likely use the phrase, I didn't feel a spark. That's more so women. Sorry. I'm not denying having said this in the past, and at the time I genuinely believe I was justified in walking away. But it's a problem if you're making these kinds of snap judgments on the first date. Try to remain open-minded. I can vouch for meeting men who didn't have the initial wow factor, but after several conversations, I became considerably more attractive. If you can make me laugh and know the difference between there and there, you've already won half the battle. And I'm gonna stop right there because this is a good point to lead on. Like, this is the media training us to think a certain way, to believe in the fairy tale love. Um, we're not gonna meet somebody and just automatically get the googly eyes and love at first sight. It's just, come on. Like, and really, we know the initial attraction is infatuation anyway. So we just got to get more realistic with our dating standards. We got to start being aware of our ego. We got to start understanding that where we are financially and where people put us in the rank and file in the hierarchy doesn't necessarily dictate who we are, right? That's where our ego comes into play, right? Because we're going to feel more positive about ourselves, and rightfully so. But we got to be realistic, though, right? And particularly with our dating standards, we got to be realistic and understanding that, okay, yes, a lot of people do judge us on our career and how much money we make. That's a fact, and that's not going nowhere, okay? But your ego has to match that, okay? It's okay to have self-esteem and self-worth, right? Nobody wants to have self-pity, but we have to be realistic. We have to understand that if we really want to be looked at in a certain light, there's some work that got to go into it. All right. So we're gonna end this episode. I hope you appreciate this episode. I thought it was a great one. Of course, I'm biased, but if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you already know where to hit me up at. All my social media handles will be in the description, as well as, of course, the links to my book and my merch. You can always go pick that up. If you just want to be so gracious to donate to my Cash App, that will also be in the description as well. So, you know, I can't leave off without thanking all my supporters and all the people that rock with me. I don't know if that's something I should have did, but I did it anyway. Okay. So, no, but no, and seriously, I definitely appreciate y'all, man. I continue to bring this knowledge to you in any way that I can. All right. But as always, I'm you, you are me. Love always, love eternal. Remember, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I think we made that case, baby. All right. So, deuces. One love.